All right, so Ohio State beats Minnesota today, but not really a lot to really talk about. Um, Definitely didn't learn very much about Ohio State in this game. Felt kind of like the Grambling State and what was the other non-conference game? Ohio, besides the Texas game, of course. But just not really a lot that we learned out of this game. Julian Sain had a really good game. Um, Threw for over 300 yards. I think 2 touchdowns in this game. Bo Jackson is number one, is RB1. That's been apparent since week 2, week 3. But not really a lot to talk about in this game. Minnesota had that one drive on their opening drive that kind of worried me a little bit, to be completely honest. I thought this might have been a look-ahead spot. Ohio State going to Champaign next week to take on Illinois, a team who they haven't played in years. It's probably been close to 10 years now, if not more. They've played. This is technically a rivalry game next week, even though it's not really a rivalry. It's a rivalry game with the trophy and everything, and the Yellow Buck trophy. So I thought going into this game that this could be a look-ahead spot. And it looked like it in the beginning. Ohio State's defense definitely doesn't have the pass rushers that they used to be completely honest. There's no Joey Bosa. There's no Nick Bosa. There's no Chase Young. There might not even be a Jonathan Cooper on this team, to be completely honest. But they play really well as a team. And that's the thing, that this team, and especially during the Washington game, you could tell when they were rushing, they always had their eyes on the quarterback, and they weren't really just trying to get by the offensive lineman. It was more like, if the quarterback's going to scramble, then I'm going to be the one to make the play. Which might be a Matt Patricia thing. It could be, one of those defensive schemes. But it also could be, hey, look, my pass rushers aren't going to be that great, but they're going to make the tackles when they may have the chance, which is going to be really good for, the scrambling quarterbacks like Bust Underwear at Michigan and all them. But anyways, I thought this could be a look-ahead spot. Minnesota is not a bad team by any means. I don't even think they're, they could compete for like a mid-tier type Big Ten team. They're not going to go to the Big Ten championship or compete like for that at all. But they could be a respectable team. So I definitely thought this could be a look-ahead spot. And it kind of looked like that in the beginning. Minnesota had a few third down conversions against the defense that had me a little worried. And then Ohio State made the red zone stops that they are now known for. And they forced the field goal. And that was it for Minnesota scoring for the rest of the game, which was really great to see. I thought that this defense was going to have an off day after that, and they proved me wrong, which is great. Prove me wrong if that's what you're going to do. But not really a lot to talk about in this game. Jeremiah Smith had a few touchdown passes. Carnell Tate had that really long touchdown catch. Julian Sain threw over 300 yards. Bo Jackson had another really good game. Offensive line kept Julian Sain clean all game. Keen Holds came in and threw a little bit there. James Peoples looked pretty good too, which normally I would say that's a good sign, but Peoples is probably the third string now at this point. Definitely not the running back that we thought he was going to be coming out of high school. But, you get some recruits that work out, you get some that don't. It's part of the game. But it's not a lot to really talk about in this game. What you really want to talk about is what happened in the rest of college football. Penn State loses to UCLA after losing the whiteout. Great. That's great for us. The little cousins, as I like to call them, down in Sad Valley. Definitely You lost to Nico. You lost to Nico. A team that was winless. And their first win comes against Penn State. They can't even fill their own home stadium. It was at least a neutral site game. If not, there was more Penn State fans than UCLA fans in that stadium today. And you lost. And it wasn't like, of course, Penn State kind of came back in the second half. But UCLA kind of dominated. And I think we can all agree that Penn State's probably the better team. But it wasn't very... All right, sorry about that. It wasn't very convincing. Like, they just didn't really have any oomph. Penn State did, that is. They didn't play like a team that knew they were better than UCLA. And James Franklin's got to do a better job coaching. Like, the fact that James Franklin, yet again, is losing to teams like this. He does it all the time. After the Ohio State losses, for the longest time. In 2017, when Penn State blew the whatever how many point lead in Columbus with JT Barrett, they turned around the next week and lost. And that was probably one of, if not the best Penn State team in the entire, since 2000. If, like, probably, maybe even you want to include the 90s in there, you probably can. And that team didn't make the playoff. That team had Saquon Barkley on that in the backfield there. And they didn't make the playoff. They didn't even make the Big Ten championship that year. Ohio State did, and Ohio State won that year. And that team probably absolutely wipes the floor with this team. And it's just... This is on James Franklin. It 1,000% is. The whole thing about James Franklin is supposed... The teams James Franklin is supposed to beat, he beats. Can't say that anymore. James Franklin was supposed to go 11-1 this year. He is now closing in on a 9-3 year if he doesn't pull a miracle out of the hat. If not 8-4 at this point. I don't think Penn State's making the playoff. And it sucks because I like Drew Aller. I do. And when he's getting, bombarded by... I shouldn't say bombarded, but like he's getting the question by the reporter today. Hey, are you guys still in the playoffs? What is he supposed to say to that? No, I think we're out and we should be focusing on winning a meaningless bowl game that I'm probably not even going to play in. No, of course he's going to say, yeah, we're still in the hunt for the playoff. But this is on James Franklin. And this is honestly kind of on Jim Knowles too. And Knowles has these types of games where he... And maybe it's not him, maybe it's his personnel right now, but Knowles had these types of games. Whether it was the Michigan game in 22 or the Georgia game in 22, where the defense just kept letting Ohio State down over and over again. Let's see, that was in 22, 23. Maybe you can say the Michigan game there, when Ohio State needed a stop, and Michigan just kept pounding the rock over and over again and wasted the time down, and then the offense couldn't do anything. I mean, regardless, Kyle McCord probably doesn't even make that play anyways against Michigan that year. But he probably has a lot more time if Knowles, doesn't play conservative in those last few minutes. 23 against Oregon, or not 23, I'm sorry. 24 against Oregon, he had that type of game where the defense just kept letting the offense down. And then Ohio State probably should have won that game anyways, and they proved that they were the better team in the Rose Bowl. But Knowles has these types of games where the defense needs to get a stop, and they can't do it. And I understand that Drew Aller is not, a C.J. Stroud type quarterback. He's probably more on the level of a Kyle McCord. But, man, that game, and, Nico played a really good game. He got beat up, so I doubt UCLA is going to be even close to 100% next week. And they'll probably lose whoever they're playing against. That I don't even know. But you gotta win those games if you're Penn State, if you want any shot at a national championship this year. And it's out the window now. You gotta win the rest of your games even to have a shot to make the Big Ten championship and go to the playoff. Because I'll tell you right now, Notre Dame's getting in over Penn State. If Texas wins out, because Texas just lost today against Florida, Texas is probably getting in over Penn State, arguably. But and it's just, it happens over and over again with James Franklin. He gets these teams, and you get your hopes up. And I didn't do this, but other people did. People picked Penn State to win the national championship this year. And that was a mistake because James Franklin is on that team. And I don't think Penn State can fire James Franklin because James Franklin is one of the better coaches they've ever had. Where do you go from here? Do you hire Jim Knowles as the head coach? Maybe. But it's been proven now that when you're the head coach, you can't be a coordinator too. Kirby tried to do it. He failed. Finally got an offensive coordinator. Or a defense coordinator, which one it was. And finally won a national championship. Ryan Day does it. He's burying his head in the sand over year after year after year. And I guess the problem was his defense. But, you get what I'm saying. The first year he actually gets an offensive coordinator he trusts, he wins a national championship. Apart from, 2019, which was his first year. So, But the Penn State, they got to find a way to win these games. And they're going to have to rebuild next year. This was the year for Penn State. If this was the year of the Ohio State national championship run, the Michigan national championship run, the Georgia national championship run, it was, or runs rather, but especially in 21 for Georgia, it was, if you don't win the national championship, when are you going to win the national championship? This was Penn State's best shot. And they're more likely to go 9-3 than to even make a playoff game. And it's kind of sad because, especially for me as an Ohio State fan, I love crushing Penn State's dreams over and over again. But I don't know. At this point, it's getting kind of sad to watch Penn State fail over and over again. But it's a little less satisfying knowing that Ohio State can't do it first. But, we'll get there in a few weeks. And hopefully that's a night game too, because if Penn State keeps losing, that's not going to be big noon. And if it's a night game, Ohio State's going blackout. Ohio State doesn't lose in night games. Last time I checked. Last time they lost in a night game at home was 2017 against Oklahoma. And that Oklahoma team went to the playoff. And we're in overtime with Georgia in the Rose Bowl that year with Baker. We don't got to talk about that game, though. Anyways, Penn State's got to get together. And if this is a James Franklin issue, then which I think we all know it is. It is a James Franklin issue. But you gotta figure out a way to right the ship here. You play Indiana and you play Ohio State. You have to win at the very least one of those games to even have a glimmer of a shot at a national championship. Not even the national championship, at the playoff. And if you want to get in, you got to win them both. But right now, I don't see Penn State winning both. Now, could they? Absolutely. Absolutely. Will they, though? I don't know. I think the Indiana game is more likely a Penn State win than the Ohio State game is. Just because Ohio State has that mental edge over Penn State. And, Indiana doesn't have the talent advantage over Penn State, if any, like an Ohio State team does consistently over Penn State, really. Now, that Penn State has closed the gap, but you know what I mean. Historically, I should say, not consistently, historically. But yeah, this is it for Penn State. This does not look good. This game was supposed to be, a get your backups in by halftime type of game. And instead they lose. So, we'll see what happens. But as an Ohio State fan, you can't lose to this Penn State team. This is one of the more weaker Penn State teams than I would probably say maybe 2020 or 2021. I would say that right now, 2022 Penn State's beating this team. 2023 Penn State's probably beating this team. And 2024 Penn State's definitely beating this team. And, I would even say that, the Shea Patterson era of Penn State teams could probably beat this team. And if you're Ohio State, you're licking your chops right now at this Penn State team. That you get them at home. And Ohio State, if you beat them 2 more times, and especially on the road next year, that's 10 years since Penn State has beaten Ohio State. Right there. That's domination. And this rivalry has been a back and forth rivalry. Even though Ohio State has won more of these games, this rivalry has been back and forth. No, the year where the 2017 or 2016, 2017, 2018 years where the 4 games were decided by a total of 10 points. But Ohio State has come out on top in every single one of those games. And right now, as an Ohio State fan, you expect Ohio State to come out on top in that game. So, we'll see what happens. Ohio State beats Minnesota. Penn State loses to UCLA. Man. Oh, and Texas. We'll talk about this for a minute. Texas loses to Florida. Really? Why is it always Ohio State teams when they play Ohio State, especially in non-con? The Notre Dames, now the Texas teams. You play Ohio State, you lose to Ohio State, and then you have an unexcusable loss that just makes that Ohio State game look really like it doesn't look like a good win anymore. No, I get the SEC is the SEC. But man, Texas can't even beat Florida. You can't even beat DJ Lagway. Archer Manning's down bad, but I don't really care. Because Ohio State's undefeated. Ohio State's going to be ranked number 1 when the AP poll comes out later this week. And I don't really expect that to change anytime soon. So, tomorrow morning we got Browns and Jags. I'll try and get a halftime video in there. Depends how tired I am. I might just do a post game, to be completely honest. We'll see how tired I am. But Browns and Jags. And then we got Ohio State, Illinois. Oh, all right. Till next time. OH.